This is Walking Your Talk, a podcast about leadership, authenticity, and courage. I'm Carolyn Taylor. Over my career, I've worked with well over 100,000 leaders in every kind of organization. People who are committed to closing the gap between their own values and those of their organization and how they show up every day. I wrote a book called Walking the Talk on how you change corporate culture, but this is much more personal. If you want to be known as someone who walks their talk, then this podcast is for you. Any intelligent fool, said Albert Einstein, can make things bigger and more complex, but it takes a touch of genius to move in the opposite direction. Our purpose in this series of episodes on simplicity is to explore what that genius can mean for you. And what are the critical elements as a leader, as an individual, that can cause you to walk your talk and make things simple for you and for those around you? This week, I want to explore the phenomena that I will call piling on, or adding more and more, saying yes more and more often, and just essentially burdening yourself and others with more and more activity, and not being able to either not start it in the first place or cut out or stop things once they've started. So if we're going to do that, we do need to explore our relationship with saying yes. And what is it about each of us, and it's different, I think, for each of us, that tends us towards saying yes when we are asked to do more? Because on the whole, society and our colleagues, our organizations, our social media will continually demand more of us. So the skill of being able to discriminate and make choices and say no has actually become a very critical skill, and one which will absolutely enable your organization to be more simple, to be lean, to be more agile, to be able to execute quicker, because you're not burdened down by an increasing amount of complexity, which simply is about taking on too many things at one time and not being willing to prioritize and make those choices which enable you to do not everything but one thing rather than another. Johnny Ives, the main designer at Apple, says that simplicity is not the absence of clutter. That rather is the consequence of simplicity. Simplicity, he says, is somehow describing the purpose and the place of an object. And so in order to establish more simplicity, we need to get very clear on what is the purpose. Why are we saying yes to things? How do they fit? What is their purpose and place within our overall life, within our overall goals, within what is important to us? Mostly what I find is that yes is a much easier thing to say than no. And that people have several reasons for saying yes. One, I think, is the avoidance of conflict. So I'm saying yes because to actually stand up and say, no, this doesn't fit with what I want, involves potentially upsetting someone. It involves having the difficult conversation that we all would perhaps prefer not to have. So we say yes, we take it on. We're not sure we're going to be able to do it, but we take it on in any case. Another reason I think that people say yes is because they want to prove how good they are, how macho, how able to take on more than anyone else, how strong, how enduring, what stamina I have. I work longer, I do more than you. So there's a kind of a competitive one-upmanship that kicks in, which burdens us with saying yes too many times. And that plus the desire to be liked, the desire to join in, the feeling that perhaps if I don't say yes, I might miss out. So I'll say yes to every meeting, because what if that's the key meeting, the one where something very important was decided and I wasn't there, so I missed it. So I think this Johnny Ives idea of being able to tap into purpose gives us the true north, and it enables us to start to really examine, what is my purpose here? What matters to me? And when I speak to people, and I am around leaders who are very good at this, and in fact, we're going to be interviewing one in the last of this series on simplicity. What stands out for me is their clear sense of purpose. They know where they're going, they know what matters, and they can evaluate everything that pops up in terms of, is this going to get me closer to this or is it not? And that becomes more important to them than whether or not they are going to please somebody, whether or not they are going to look as if they are better than everybody else, whether they are going to avoid conflict. It really does become a purpose-filled sense of direction. And so when people say, we're lost, we don't know where we're going, we have so much on our plates, and we're not being given that really clear, true North Star, you know that things are going to get complex, because the ability to cut things out is directly related to that. We have been working in the last year or two with a client who was extraordinarily good at this. He was able to know which of the products were going to make them the most money, which markets were the ones that were going to really matter. And he was completely consistent with just focus on that. Find ways of getting everything else off your plate. Focus your money on that. Focus your time on that. Focus your energy on that. Because if we get that right, the rest will take care of itself. And people kept coming up and saying, yes, but what about this product? And yes, but I've got this great new idea. And yes, but we did that last year and it was really exciting. And he just kept going. Does it hit this strategy? Does it help us on this purpose or not? And by doing that, he created such pure simplicity. He really did achieve that Johnny Ives description of saying that simplicity is about knowing the purpose and the place of an object, the purpose and a place of a decision, of a project, of the way you're spending a time, of a new request. So my exercise for you this week is to add with purpose and to subtract with purpose. When you think about adding something else onto your plate, before you say yes, if you need to ask for a day, ask for a little bit of time to pause and reflect and think and go, how does this fit with the main theme of what I'm trying to achieve this month, this year, this week? And similarly, if you do decide that it does fit with that, just to have a continual review of what else you've got on your plate and start subtracting things with purpose in a purposeful way. And the subtracting, I think, is more difficult even than saying no to something in the first place. Because when we subtract something, we already have some vested time in that activity. And so that by admitting that now it's time to stop it, we are in a sense walking away from something in which we've invested time, whether it's a project or whether it's something that you have personally been involved in or with your team. There is that sense of perhaps we're having to admit that it's not been successful. So just take those two concepts, add with purpose, subtract with purpose. Think about it for yourself. Think about it with those you work with and see what emerges. This has been the third of the 3 personal pillars that I have found make the most difference. The first was to explore your relationship with perfectionism and to become better at doing things that are fit for purpose and good enough. The second was to explore your relationship with procrastination and to become better at being decisive on those things where making a fast decision is better than getting all the information and waiting until you have that before you decide. And the third has been to explore your relationship with piling on and become better at purposefully adding and subtracting things in your life which then impact everybody else. You do this well, and you will become known as someone who walks their talk on simplicity. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week.